Greetings, everyone. My name is Graham Walker. I'm president of Patrick Henry College, and it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce today's Newsmaker interview series led by our wonderful faculty member in journalism, Dr. Marvin Olasky. It's quite a privilege for us to have Marvin Olasky on our faculty. Many of you may know that for years he was a professor of journalism at the University of Texas at Austin, and also for many years has been the editor-in-chief and chief shaper of World Magazine. And of course, we're going to be joined in a way by, implicitly joined by the 400,000 readers of World after this interview is written up and then later published in World Magazine. So it's a privilege to have Marvin Olasky with all of his experience behind him leading this interview series. The experience, of course, includes being an advisor to presidents. You may know that he advised President George W. Bush and others. He published the book Compassionate Conservatism, also the book The Tragedy of American Compassion. Has written extensively on cultural analysis and been a very important voice in American public life. And today we have the privilege of participating in Marvin Olasky's interview with Mr. Mikey Weinstein. Is it Weinstein or Stein?
Steen.
Steen, okay, make sure I get this pronounced properly. It's a pleasure to have Mikey Weinstein here. He's held numerous positions in corporate America as a senior executive and attorney. After graduating from the U.S. Air Force Academy in 1977, Mr. Weinstein pursued the study of law at the Air Force Law School program and earned his J.D., after which he served in the U.S. Air Force as a Judge Advocate General, or JAG, if I've got the terminology right, for 10 years. Some of his other titles have included legal counsel to the Reagan White House, general counsel to H. Ross Perot, one-time presidential candidate, and Perot Systems Corporation, and he is the founder of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, sometimes known as MRFF. The MRFF states that its mission is to ensure, quote, that all members of the United States Armed Forces fully receive the constitutional guarantees of religious freedom to which they and all Americans are entitled by virtue of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. The MRFF fulfills its mission in part by battling what Mr. Weinstein has sometimes referred to as the far-right religious fundamentalists, and I assume that has a little bit of a pejorative edge to it by the sound of it. In November 2013, for the 5th consecutive year, his foundation was officially nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, its 6th total nomination. In December of 2012, he was named one of the 100 most influential people in U.S. defense by Defense News. Weinstein has 2 sons and 1 daughter, and with his wife of 37 years, they also have a granddaughter. Please welcome Mikey Weinstein and Marvin Olasky today.
Well, thank you all for coming. If you've come expecting a World Wrestling Federation event, you may be in the wrong place, because our goal today, even though there are certainly differences between Mikey and myself, our goal today is to, we hope, end up with more light than heat. So we have a lot of territory to cover. I'll be asking questions for a while, and I'll try to keep a lot of these questions short, and Mikey will keep his answers short. We have all this territory to cover, and then there'll be time in the last 20 minutes for all of you to ask questions and so forth. But let me ask you, Mikey, starting out about some situations as to what's appropriate and what's not. Here in 2009, Air Force News published articles and pictures of a Torah dedication ceremony in Iraq and the accompanying adult bar mitzvah of an enlisted airman. So this was done. These are all enlisted men. Officers were also there, mixed ranks. This is on an Air Force base, government property. Was it appropriate or not to have that ceremony, including bar mitzvah?
Well, this would be the same thing as showing a problem with somebody at a chapel showing a nativity scene on base. For us, with the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, it's not a question of the issue of pushing one's faith except for 3 key determinants, and that is, what is the appropriate time, place, and manner. Now, if you're in a military publication and you're showing somebody at a Torah dedication ceremony, or you're having someone having an adult bar mitzvah, this is something that we would generally, we've never, number one, never had any complaints with. We're in our 11th year of this fight, and the foundation itself will start its 10th year in a couple of months. So we've never had a single issue on that.
Okay, so it's okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Generally.
Generally. Let me ask you about another one. This is also in 2009, but not in Iraq, at Fort Jackson in South Carolina. 100 American Muslim soldiers gathered at Fort Jackson to pray as a group celebrating the end of Ramadan. Many of them originate from the Middle Eastern countries. They're training to become interpreters for the Army. But there were service members from other nations also training at Fort Jackson, including one colonel from the Pakistani Air Force, who said, I was expecting a lot of difficulties and problems. I don't face any. I've written back to my family back home in Pakistan that I'm very comfortable and very happy with my opportunity here to exercise my religious belief. Problem with that?
Again, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to give the answers. And that would be, unless I had more information, there's no issue there with regard to time, place, or manner, or command duress upon someone else to accept a particular perspective. Mark.
Okay, but there's a mixture of officers and enlisted men there. It doesn't, and in fact, if the invitation is issued by an officer saying, here's what I believe, why don't you come and join me for Ramadan, okay?
Well, no, wait a minute, because we're going a little fast. Let me make it clear. If you're telling me that a brigade commander who happens to be Muslim is saying, we are celebrating Ramadan, I'd like to invite you to come here, or whatever, something we've never gotten within light years of happening, that would be something we'd have to look at, because we're seeing that a kind of an alloy between command authority and a religious belief. But I don't think that's what happened in this instance.
Right, but if there's an officer in a situation like this who makes it very clear, this is voluntary, you're perfectly happy for you not to come, and so forth, is that a problem if there's an officer involved in it in some way? If there's an officer inviting people as a person who believes this, but this is not a command function of his, is that a problem?
It is a potential problem.
Potential problem.
It is,
okay.
Yes.
But the thing itself is not a problem. Celebrating
Correct.
Ramadan on a military base.
Correct, but it's the associated, again, time, place, and manner.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we have thousands of chapels and thousands of chaplains in the military. That isn't the issue. The issue is time, place, and manner.
Okay. Another one, this is going back to Iraq. 200 Buddhist worshipers bowing their heads in meditation at contingency operation base in Iraq, celebrating the holiest day of the Buddhist calendar. Soldiers from across Iraq are invited, and again, it's a mixture of enlisted men and officers. No problem.
Well, let me try to answer it. Please don't suggest the answer when you ask me the question. We've received 0 complaints about this, and we have, as I speak to you today, 38,532 clients, 96% of whom are Protestants and Roman Catholics in the Marine Corps, Army, Navy, and Air Force Reserve components, National Guard, Coast Guard, which is actually Department of Homeland Security. Okay. So we've never heard about any issues with regard to these. However, in answering your question, if we had a commander saying, the Buddhists are having a celebration today, and you don't have to be there, but I'd like to invite you to be there, I would ask whether or not the commander, him or herself, were Buddhist, because it would make a difference to us.
Okay, if the commander is Buddhist, you'd say he should not send out an invitation of that
Yes,
sort?
that would be a problem. Okay. If this hypothetical ever happened, which never has.
Okay. Another story from Iraq, a Wiccan service. Monday nights, this is from a Wiccan service. Monday nights are a sweet time of fellowship for a dozen local soldiers who practice Wicca while they live and work here. And they had a variety of activities, tarot cards, rune stones, classes on candle making. The focal point of this activity that particular evening was charging personal items with positive energy, laying them on a picnic table, sword, coins, identification tags, pentagrams. The group cast spells, but according to this account, they are good spells. Spells give us protection from harm, said Sergeant Andrew Konopasek, a combat engineer. And it goes on in this. They can now list Wiccan on their identification tags. They have an email distribution list, a patch with the name FOB, Warhorse Wiccans and Pagans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Problem?
Well, what is the fact that they're having a religious celebration?
Yeah.
That in of itself, of course not. Now, if we had a Wiccan commander that was saying, we're doing this, you don't have to come, because oftentimes what we have are Christian commanders, senior NCOs, officers saying, we're having a little fellowship at my house this weekend, we're having this private Bible study, you don't have to feel like you have to come. That's when we, fire up the tanks and get moving.
Okay. Regardless of, he's saying you don't have to come, no obligation, this won't be held against you if you don't come, this is perfectly free, and things like that.
Right.
But you're saying anytime there's an officer involved speaking to enlisted men, even if he makes it very clear that it's completely voluntary, you're saying this is something you might look into if you got a complaint?
No, what I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
So let's see if we're not two ships passing in the night, because let's face it, me being here feels like landing on an alien planet in a faraway solar system in a galaxy that is so distant in an alternative universe. But it's great to be here. And look, I got this great hat. So let's so let's slow down for a second, because I'm a trial lawyer. I can kind of see where we're going. This is supposed to be an interview, not a deposition. So my point is that each of these examples you're giving, and there is a concept that my research director, Chris Rada, likes to refer to as gish galloping, where you give a whole list of things, and then we suddenly get down to the, you fall through the floor because there's a trap door. Let me make it very clear, because you can probably go on.
No trap door here.
We've only got 3,600 seconds, and that includes the times for the students and others to ask questions. When we get involved is when we have the following situations: duty hours, wearing uniforms, in the military workplace, and where there's a superior-subordinate relationship. In other words, of course, the duty workplace could be a cockpit, it could be a tank, a Bradley fighting vehicle. Duty hours generally go 24/7. And if we have a situation, we've had this, where we had a second lieutenant being proselytized by another second lieutenant, we just don't get that involved. I mean, welcome to America, you're of the same rank. But if you're in a situation where you are being compelled by command, the draconian specter of military command influence, that's where we get involved.
Okay.
If that was a Wiccan commander saying, come watch us positively charge this crystal, we're going to get involved. None of this has ever happened. 99.99% of the time, it's what we refer to as a dominionist or fundamentalist Christian. Please proceed with your interrogatories.
Okay. So you're not getting complaints then about Muslim or Buddhist or Wiccan or Jewish observances?
Here's one we got. We got this one a few months ago from an evangelical Christian airman who was very upset that his superior drove the car on the military installation, a well-known installation, I won't give the particulars, and he had on the back of his car a sticker which was the Christian fish symbol with the word Satan inside of it. The evangelical Christian airman went to his local chaplain at the base and then went to the JAGs, the military lawyers, and they all said, that's your commander, probably his commander's First Amendment right to do that. He then told them he was going to come to me, and they gasped. Mikey and his foundation eat Christians for breakfast. Why would you do that? He came to us. We interfaced with senior leadership at the Pentagon, because that was clearly wrong. It took about 10 days, but that commander was called into his commander's office and given an option. Don't drive the vehicle on base or take the sticker off. It was clearly denigrating to Christianity. So that one doesn't get into the media because it doesn't fit the narrative of Mikey and his family and foundation want to eat Christians for breakfast.
So if an enlisted man had that sticker, would that not be a problem compared to the officer having the sticker?
Here's the problem. It's a rank structure. What is the rank of the enlisted person, right? And, if I don't think very many Airman Basic or E1s, as we would call them, would have that. But again, as I'm trying to make sure that everyone here in TV land and the audience, is it duty hours, duty place? Are they wearing the uniform? And is there a situation of superior to subordinate? Your military superior of whatever rank, enlisted or officer, is not your shift manager at Starbucks. The military is unbelievably tribal, adversarial, communal, and ritualistic. And let me just say one more thing. Oftentimes we forget about the law. And 40 years ago, one of the most conservative Supreme Court justices ever in the history of the Supreme Court, William Rehnquist, penned a 6-2 overwhelming decision called Parker versus Levy. And if I was your teacher for a day at Patrick Henry, I'm hoping next semester I'm going to enroll as a student, so be nice to me. I hope there's not too much hazing. Check out Parker versus Levy, because what Chief Justice Rehnquist says there, he says, look, the military is very different than the civilian world. Many of your constitutional rights in this environment are going to be severely limited because, hello, it's the military. Tribal, adversarial, communal, and ritualistic. Many restrictions on your freedoms, including religious freedoms, that would not be permissible at Patrick Henry College or at Walgreens, are going to be perfectly fine in the military, because we have to be able to support good order, morale, discipline, and unit cohesion to such a magnitude to create the necessary lethality for our military to protect the full panoply of constitutional rights for the rest of us.
Okay.
Next.
Iraq, once again, several soldiers being baptized in the base pool. Their chaplain is in charge of this. He's a lieutenant colonel. He's a chaplain. And he says,
but he's still an officer.
Still an officer.
Right. Field grade officer.
Okay. And here they're baptized. And similarly here in Afghanistan, a Marine Lance Corporal baptized by a Navy chaplain during combat operations in Afghanistan, actually there. Baptized in an irrigation ditch fed by a river in Afghanistan. this baptism, the Lance Corporal said, means more after going through the firefights. Problem with that?
Let me give you a name. Anyone remember the name Norman Schwarzkopf out there? You guys remember who he was? Probably one of our last great generals. Let me tell you what he said about that, because he was sitting here, and we had communications with him right before he passed, because we were hoping he was going to be able to join our advisory board. I think I was hoping he would be able to do it, but he got too ill. He led the Gulf War, right? He actually made the following statement. He told his chaplains, take off your religious emblems off your uniform, because the Christian chaplains have the cross, the Jewish chaplains have the Torah. There's the sickle moon aspect for Islam. I'm not sure what the other faiths have. He also said, when you conduct your religious services, take down all religious emblems. You can still have your faith, you can do the services, but, quote, we're not going to wave a red flag in front of religious extremists. So the question I have is, when we are viewed as occupiers and interlopers, downrange, where my son-in-law is right now, where my nephew's been many times, why are we doing something that's going to enrage our Islamic allies, embolden our Islamic enemies, and many times eviscerate good order, morale, and discipline among the rest of our military, many of whom are Christian, that come to us? So the bottom line is, as a matter of law, we could take that up. I'll ask the rhetorical question, is it wise, as General Schwarzkopf said, to wave a red flag of anger and intimidation and agitation and confrontation and contention in front of religious extremists?
Soldiers come to faith in Christ, let's say. They've been in firefights. They've seen their buddies killed. The old saying that there are no atheists in foxholes and rubber rafts. I know, I'm sure you do. Right. That's why I wanted to bring it in here. Of
course you did. Yeah.
You're saying they should not be baptized?
What I'm saying is that they are not there as a primary mission. In fact, General Order Number 1 in the AOR, which is what, anyone know what the AOR stands for? Area of Responsibility. That's the term the military uses for being down in the downrange in Iraq, Afghanistan, or sometimes elsewhere. It completely banned the proselytizing of any religion, faith, or other type of belief system at all. It was the number one aspect of this. Saying that they can't be baptized, of course we would not say that. Okay. Saying that at all. But I'm almost done. Give me another 16 seconds. We've only got 3,600. A lot of them are gone, and I can see these eager faces have a lot of good questions out there. But the fact is that something that we ought to be promoting on the web, because the number of chaplains that proselytize unabashedly on websites we have 1,000 military installations scattered around the world is literally unrestricted.
Yeah, we could get into a discussion of what's proselytizing and what's not.
Correct.
But let me just ask over here.
Right.
Let's say that this comes at the impetus of this particular corporal. Mm-hmm. He wants to be baptized.
Sure.
He professes faith in Christ. He wants to be baptized, as Christians have wanted to do for the past 2,000 years. No?
Listen to me carefully. That is fine.
Okay.
Words of 3 syllable. That is fine.
Okay.
That is not our issue, because time, place, and manner, that's not the issue we're talking about. Is this something that should be promoted by the public affairs people around the world? Look, Airman Smith came to Christ, because I can tell you we have some people with us that were fundamentalist Christians when they went downrange.
Okay, so it's
and they became atheists.
You just don't want the military to be publicizing it. Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay. Another situation. This is in 2010. A group of Marines headed for Afghanistan underwent baptism in the ocean off Camp Pendleton.
Yes.
Okay, 29 Marines, all volunteers, reservists. They're heading to Afghanistan. A Navy chaplain performed the baptisms. Is that a crime?
Let's back off from using the word crime. We obviously got massively involved in that one, and we have folks at Central Command at MacDill Air Force Base that we coordinated with on this, because this was massively promoted all over the place. The fact that they wanted to get baptized is not an issue. The fact that it was promoted by in the newspapers, in the electronic and print media, by the military, we will never know just to what degree that emboldened our enemies and blew the limbs off or took the lives of our members of the military, because we look right now like the 10th version of the 9 prior crusades, which began in the year 1096. We absolutely do to the people that we're fighting, and we're providing an unbelievably unrestricted, unbridled propaganda bonanza to ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call them, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, the insurrectionists, the jihadists, the mujahideen, anything you want to do. So from a crime perspective, we can sit down and look at the Uniform Code of Military Justice because the military has its own criminal code, for those that don't know. The fact that that was a battalion or brigade commander, I forget who it was that was doing it, that's a potential issue. But the massive promotion of it was ridiculously stupid.
Okay, but the event itself, you don't have a problem with.
Correct.
Okay.
If assuming, again, that there wasn't command duress placed by that senior commander to get his people out there.
Right. Let's say that the lieutenant colonel attends,
right?
But he's not at all pressuring them. That's okay as long as he's not pressuring them. If he's just there, or should he not be there at all?
Let me put it this way. From my perspective, even being there, in this instance, we had indicia that showed quite a bit more than just that. But if, in fact, the person's there, that brings his command authority there. But then you can make the statement, well, can the commander attend a bar mitzvah or something? Yeah, we understand the difference. But in this, but the question is there the creation of an alloy of command, power, and discretion, with the gospel of Jesus Christ, with Judaism, with atheism or whatever. That's the issue.
So the Muslim Ramadan service occurred, and you don't have a problem with that occurring. Again, we're assuming there's no commander, Muslim commander doing this, but it was also highly publicized.
Right.
Was that a problem to publicize it or not?
Well, again, let's make it. Let's pretend for a second that we're in one of the war rooms in the Pentagon. Right.
No, I understand that I can understand prudentially you may not want to do it, but I'm just saying.
No, I'm not saying that. No.
No. Prudentially, you may not want to publicize
prudentially,
Christian
you may
baptism.
Want to. You may want to. In a Ramadan service, right?
Right. Yes.
Because that's going to take away. Did you all see the Major Miriam? God, I forget her last name. The fighter pilot from the UAE who led one of the attacks on ISIS yesterday, that's all over the media. Right. Now, the level of the people that we fight generally tend to be homophobic, Islamophobic, misogynistic, anti-Semitic. But here you have a female fighter pilot from the United Arab Emirates who leads this attack, and which is a huge propaganda thing. So the concept that Ramadan is showing up in a paper and they're doing it, the service by itself, once again, listen, perfectly fine. The fact that it's being publicized is not the same as if we're showing, maybe showing a Hanukkah candle being lit, a new Torah from World War II that was preserved and being refurbished, and certainly the 8 trillion aspects of Christianity that are in the military newspapers every hour of every day.
Okay, but basically you're saying the reporting of that would be fine. The reporting perhaps of the Buddhist service, the Wiccan service would be fine. But the Christian service should not be reported.
I'm saying that you have to look at the determinants each and every time. The fact that you have a combat unit that's about to deploy and to face the enemy, with their commander leading them into the waves of Southern California, and isn't this wonderful and great? That is a completely different aspect in the concept of the military analysis that should have happened. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you now, having spoken with the Navy staff and other senior staff, as we do constantly, they realized it was a huge and total mistake, and that was something we're going to try to prevent. And yet it continues to happen every day.
Right. But let me just ask one final question, then we'll move on. Thinking journalistically, you're covering this, you're covering this, you're covering this. Let's say on an equal opportunity basis, you're not giving any more publicity to the Christian event and to the Muslim event and so forth, but all of them, all of these are news events.
Right.
And are you saying then that the other news events should be covered and the Christian event, we should pretend that it didn't happen?
No, of course not. I'm talking about an aspect of magnitude. Let me give you an example. One of my classmates from the academy who retired recently as a multi-star general, when he took over a very famous military installation, he had a meeting with the chaplains, and he said, look, I see in the base paper you advertise when the Jewish services are the Catholic, the Protestant, and the Muslim services. And he said, why are the Protestant services always listed first? And he's a Protestant. And they looked at them, with that dull look of a trapped animal, like, huh? And he said, start circulating them.
So let's do it in alphabetical order.
No,
Catholic,
not
Muslim,
alphabetical.
Protestants down at the bottom?
Don't suggest my answers, my dear friend.
All right.
It was rotated every week. He also took a tour of the base, and he went into the area that the Muslims were located at. And he said, well, where's the arrow pointing to Mecca? They didn't have that up there. He asked them to put that up. It's an accommodation. It's a human, civil thing to do. And so these are rational decisions.
So all these then are okay as long as it's on an equal opportunity basis, you're treating them equally, and you don't have a commander who seems to be saying, you go to this. Okay, that's good.
Well, wait a minute. Before you paint me with that, I know you've got a lot of questions. Don't look disappointed.
Okay.
Every one of these instances has to be looked at carefully for time, place, and manner. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sounding like a chatterbox because I can give you a gigantic list of things on our side as well. So the bottom line is that I'll go back to what Schwarzkopf said and the fact that we are fighting fundamentalist, Wahhabist and Salafist Muslims. And so we have to look at this from that perspective. Next question.
The current controversy concerning Bibles in rooms at Navy lodges. There are Navy lodges all over the place. I think there are 74 locations, 24,000 guest rooms, reservists, and soldiers are able to do it at lower prices than be able to get elsewhere. And so basically in June there was a directive of Bibles out. In August there was a directive of Bibles back. Now it's being discussed and so forth. And you said when you were asked for a comment on this, that we would be just as angry if there was a Quran or a Torah or Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion in these bedside tables. Fair enough. What if in these rooms there was a desire to give people literature of various kinds? What if there was a little bookcase with a Quran and Torah and Richard Dawkins' God Delusion and then a copy of the Bible? Would you have a problem with that if they're all there?
Okay, let me answer.
I will.
It wasn't just the Bible. It was the Gideon's version of the Bible. There are many versions of it.
Right.
If you allowed every faith or non-faith to put their beloved book in a Navy Lodge room, number one, there'd be no place to sleep. It'd be so crowded. And number two, we would call that room a library.
Well,
so our suggestion, my dear friend Marvin, is that we would ask that the Bibles of any sort, the Qurans, Dawkins, The God Delusion, my favorite book, Green Eggs and Ham. It's a little
excellent book.
I love the illustrations. Would all be at the reservation desk, your registration desk, and if you want it, you can go up there and ask for it. That would be our answer to that. Obviously, have been on the verge of a potential class action suit on that for a long time. And so that's, in the meantime, the Navy is currently, as we discussed at lunch, reviewing that policy. I wouldn't hold your breath for a determination on that too soon.
But let's say that there let's say that there was a little bookcase in the room, a little bookcase, and open to anyone who wanted to donate a book to the Navy for this purpose. I doubt if I don't think you'd be turning the bedroom into a library. This requires a real commitment on the part of the organization. I mean, the Gideons do this, and there are Gideons who do it. They volunteer their time, their lives, their money for it. If there are people from Jewish or Buddhist or Wiccan or Muslim who want to do the same thing, make the same commitment of time and money to do it, why not let them do it? It's not, and then if we find out that we're turning a bedroom into a library, then we can say, okay, maybe we have to do something about this. But why have why keep everyone out? Why have the naked public square as opposed to maybe a crowded public square?
Are you ready for the answer?
I'm ready for the answer.
Okay. We really miss Sandra Day O'Connor on the U.S. Supreme Court. I miss her badly. She once said that in America, brothers and sisters of Patrick Henry College, we don't count heads before enforcing the First Amendment. It doesn't matter if you say, you go get funded the way the Gideons are funded. You find your benefactors that will make sure that they fly you all over the place. And yes, you'll be a volunteer, but we have other ways of making sure we compensate and take care of as you do the Lord's work, et cetera, et cetera. And you get to put your thing in the Navy Lodge. That is not the issue. It's the wrong focus. The focus is that it's there. What if you had someone saying, David Silverman, who's a friend of mine, the head of the American Atheists Association, they've just launched a new TV channel. I haven't watched it yet. I'll try to after I get off of ESPN. But what if, as you went into Navy lodges, the only thing you could turn on your TV was the American Atheists new TV channel? Well, they're donating it. They're not going to make anybody pay for it. That isn't the issue. You see, it's become inextricably intertwined with, hello, the U.S. Navy. So you can't do it. It's not a question of, well, they're just donating. It's not a problem. The other issue is the military is not allowed to provide a selective benefit to Burger King over McDonald's, GM over Chevy, and they also can't endorse a non-federal entity. I did check before I came to PHC today. There is no separation between hamburgers and state or cars and state in the U.S. Constitution, and there's no case law on it. But there is when it comes to the separation of physical, metaphysical, temporal, spiritual, and church and state.
Let's say there's a group of Jane Austen devotees who would like to put a copy of Pride and Prejudice in every room at a lodge. And the lodge people say, okay, that's good, because that's a good piece of literature. Okay to do or not?
Now, I'm going to ask you, because I know you went to Yale, so you're a pretty smart guy.
Well, you've really stuck it into me now, yeah?
All right. Do you really expect me to say, with everybody watching, that a Jane Austen book couldn't go in there, or or for that matter, Catcher in the Rye or something like that? Come on, let's get serious when it comes to questions.
Are you saying that or not?
No, I'm saying, of course, that would be perfect.
That'd be okay.
That's fine. That's not proselytizing. Now,
Okay.
if you put Uncle Tom's Cabin in there or something else, I mean, if they want to drive, it's like saying you can't have a painting of a river in there because it might be the river enthusiasts. You know, there's going to be river supremacists and stuff like that.
Okay, so you're saying, Jane Austen is fine. What about John Milton? Paradise Lost.
I think that we're getting a little bit closer, but I think that's, I'm not the bookmeister. Remember, we don't go out looking. This is important. We don't go out looking for the issues. These are people who come to us. We've polygraphed over, God, I forget how many people that have brought issues to us because we couldn't believe we were hearing it ourselves. And nobody's ever failed a polygraph. We've had 2 that refused the polygraph. So we've never had the moment we get a Jane Austen thing coming in here, I'm going to have them. I have your number. I have all your numbers.
All right.
They're going to call you.
Okay, but we're fine then. Okay, Jane Austen's fine, Milton's fine, Dante's Inferno, Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. I mean, these are literature. What about something?
I'm not necessarily saying. I'm just watching you.
Okay.
Watching you carefully.
You're just watching carefully. Good.
Yeah, let's get to some serious questions.
Okay. Here's a serious question. You had earlier this week one headline on your website: Christian extremists driven mad through constitutional advocacy, MRFF pressure. So you're anti-extremist. Is that a fair characterization of what you want to be?
No, we are in favor of extremists if they support Slayer, Metallica, Springsteen, and the Dodgers.
Okay.
And again, I know that a lot of you are here today because seeing us here at this time is much like maybe watching Sarah Palin in a mosh pit at a Slayer concert. So there's that NASCAR, is there going to be a crash kind of thing. So now I forget the question again.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's going to be in these rooms, what can be in these rooms, what should not be in these rooms. I mean,
we definitely support pillows.
Okay, support pillows and maybe even sheets, although not if people are wearing them. So, is
there a bar on campus at all? No. All right.
Here's a piece of writing where this is a person who says he was characterized as an extremist. I was disappointed originally, but I gradually gained a measure of satisfaction from the label. Was not Jesus an extremist for love? Quote, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, end quote. He asked, continuing this reading, was not Amos an extremist for justice? Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Was not Paul an extremist for the Christian gospel? I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus. If someone wanted to put that in a hotel room, yes, no?
In the Marriott? Because I don't think that fits the LDS narrative.
Whatever, Marriott, Hilton, wherever places you like to rest in.
Yeah, I like to go to the Hilton, the Hyatt, the Motel 6.
The Motel 6,
like that.
yeah.
Obviously, that's not the U.S. military, so we wouldn't give a crap about that.
If we were in a Navy lodge, someone wanted
then we would give a crap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail.
I understand. I recognize the letter very, very well. I also realize that Martin Luther King said many things, not the least of which is in the end, we remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends, and there comes a time when silence becomes betrayal.
Okay.
Next question.
Next question. All right.
And that extremist that you quoted that we were talking about in our letter was Pat Robertson. Not exactly a guy I'll be going out to lunch with anytime soon.
Okay. Let me just ask one other thing. Now, you say the military is a special circumstance because of the great difference between officers and enlisted men. What about a university where there are professors and students? Professors grading students, they have a lot to say about students' career development and so forth. Similar in that way or different? In other words, should a professor ever in his office, let's say a student comes with a big problem, let's say it's a Buddhist professor, and the student says, I'm really troubled. What can this Buddha do for me? Why don't you tell me about that? Is it okay then for the professor to say, yeah, I've had experience with Buddha, and here's meditation, this works for me, maybe it'll work for you. Is that okay for the professor to say or not?
Is the professor employed by the United States Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, or West Point?
Professor is employed by the state of Texas.
All right. That's something that, of course, is not in our lane to focus on unless the professor was involved in ROTC. But I have a question for you. What happened? We talked about discretion points because this actually happened last year. What do you do if you're in an engineering class at my alma mater and the alma mater of 4 of my kids and my brother-in-law, and it's the class has a huge amount of discretionary points. The class has taken its first GR, which is what a graded review or a test. I don't know what you guys call them here at PHC, but probably tests, right?
No, it's called hell.
Okay, hell. I'm not even going to touch that. All right, but afterwards. He told he looked at his class after he came in, after they had done poorly on the test, and he said, "Don't worry, the semester's only begun. You only need one equation," and there are many equations for what this engineering discipline was doing. And he wrote on the board, I want you all to think about this. He wrote 1 + 3 = 4. That's the only equation you need to make it through my class, said this this senior officer in uniform to all the cadets at the Air Force Academy, trying to make them feel a little better because they didn't do well on the test. And they took a picture of it with one of their phones. He didn't see that. And then they were very surprised because, I mean, even I was a psychology major, or as I said, a scientist, a behavioral scientist. And that was my major at the academy. So formulas were always scary to me. Then he filled in the words, brothers and sisters from PHC, 1 cross + 3 nails = 4 given. Does anybody here see a problem with that? I presume probably most of you don't. Is that okay, my esteemed PhD brother?
You know, I should probably go through the discussion you did. Well, it depends upon time, place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, whoa, stop. Now look at the camera.
It depends.
You think that time, place, and you think it depends? The only thing I can think of for depends is old people wearing diapers. For that depends.
So, what I would say is that we want to see what the situation is.
You need to see more than what was just told to you. Okay, that's what I'm saying.
I want to know. As you want to know.
Right.
But let me ask. Okay, let's take it from that situation, which you consider particularly egregious. Maybe it is. I don't know. But
you don't know. I just want to make sure.
I'm saying this. I mean, I don't know the particular situation. I haven't heard of that situation.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, okay. But let's say if a student comes to a professor in his office, or a soldier comes to a commander in his office, and wants to talk about stuff. Should the commander say, I cannot talk about this? Does he give away his opportunity? Sure.
Okay. Our foundation worked hard with the Air Force as much as we could to pass a new Air Force regulation, which was born on August 7th, 2012, called Air Force Instruction 1-1, Section 2.11. The religious right, whom we battle all the time, went out of their minds with this. And here's the language that drove them crazy. Pretty close to the language. Air Force leaders at all levels must avoid the actual or apparent use of their position to promote their religious faith to subordinates and must not show preferential treatment for one religious faith over others. Now, that is still the law of the U.S. Air Force. Mm-hmm. It has been under review since about Memorial Day, which is astonishing to us and astonishing to many people in the Air Force as to what the hell is wrong with that. And I do mean hell there. The bottom line here is that, obviously, if someone came in to a professor, say at West Point, Annapolis, or the Air Force Academy, and said, "I'm struggling. I'm having family issues. I don't understand why I can't get through this class. And is there anything you can do to help me?" We're going to ask that professional, who's the professor, who's in a position of superiority there, has to be very careful. I'm not going to say, no, you can't say to someone who's suffering, here's something that's worked for me. But it's got to be done deftly and very carefully, right? Okay.
And if it's not done deftly in the military, there's the Inspector General hotline, there's the chain of command, there are legal services, there are social services.
They're all worthless, Marvin, listen.
They're all worthless?
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't strong enough. They're all freaking worthless, all right? Okay. We have so many members, if you're the victim of fundamentalist, religious, generally Christian predation in the military, there's 5 places you can go. You can go up your chain of command, but they're usually the ones that are the perpetrators, so that's out. You can go to the JAGs, but they are staff officers. They only have so much clout. You can go to the chaplains, about 84% of whom are evangelical, which by itself is fine. We have many evangelical clients, but if they cross the line into becoming dominionists or fundamentalists, about a third of them are there. That's not going to help, and they're just staff officers. You can go to the IG, the Inspector General, and you can go to the military version of EEO. The problem is there you have to out yourself. And in today's U.S. military, ladies and gentlemen, when you stand up for your religious rights, you turn yourself into what we call a tarantula on a wedding cake. And they don't last very long. They don't last very long at all. The 5th thing they can do is they can come to us, and we provide them AARP. And not the thing for older people, but we provide them anonymity, action, results, and protection. We're very militant and we're very aggressive, but our militancy and aggression is in support of the U.S. Constitution. We fight in the media and we fight in court. Next question.
The Inspector General hotline also allows anonymity, right?
Oh, arguably to start with, assuming there is an NSA voice analysis.
Okay.
One more thing. We have a large number of folks that are professional IG staff and EEO staff in the military who have come to us as clients. They're clients of ours. So when you have the correctional officers at the at the prison coming to the certain prisoners asking for protection, Houston, we have a problem. Except it's much worse than that. We refer to it as not a problem, issue, or challenge. That's what we're talking about here at PHC on Friday afternoon. We call it a national security threat.
Okay. We have 20 minutes left, or 1,200 seconds, as you're saying. So think about your questions. I just want to read a couple of statements from Mikey, which I've really, I just find fascinating, defining who MRFF is. That's great. We are a weapon. We're a militant organization. Our job is to kick ass, take names, lay down a withering field of fire, and leave sucking chest wounds on this unconstitutional heart of darkness, this imperious fascistic contagion of unconstitutional triumphalism.
I love that one.
Yeah. Or this one here, this one more, and then you can ask questions. We've got this fanatical religiosity in fundamental Christianity. It's called dominionist Christianity. If you had your nostrils assaulted with the stench of 10,000 rotting swine, that's what these people smell like, end quote. Anyway, questions for any of you?
Well, you didn't. It actually gets better. You left off the last half.
Yeah. I've left off the freaking and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. Do I get to call on anybody? Anybody have a statement out there for anything, or clarification?
Oh,
I'm sorry. First off, thank you very much. Right here.
Oh, sorry, sure.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Thank you very much for coming out here today and speaking to us. It's been very interesting. I actually resonated with what you said about putting the mission first, right, and not doing things with a religious faith that could cause problems down the road. And so I'm curious, because I don't think it was discussed, what about situations, say on the battlefield, where an officer or enlisted personnel expressing their religious convictions is actually good for morale? So for instance, if I'm a Muslim second lieutenant in a company, and maybe it's mixed religious, but I'm like, all right, we're all going to, we're about to go into the firefight. Let's all pray together for a few minutes. Not necessarily trying to proselytize, right, but kind of a bonding thing like I would have with my family or someone else before going into duress. I'm interested in your opinion on that.
What's your name?
Derringer.
Your first name is Derringer?
Well, it's actually my middle name. My first name is Matthew, but I go by my middle name. It's confusing.
No, I'm just thinking of the pistol, the Derringer.
Yes, sir.
So I'll always think of you as kind of a pistol.
Lay down a withering field of fire.
A withering field of fire.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, what you mentioned, and that's a good question. You have to realize that nearly a quarter of the U.S. military expresses no religious faith whatsoever. And remember, we talked about Sandra Day O'Connor's, we don't count heads before enforcing the First Amendment. So you're going to immediately ostracize secularists, humanists, atheists, and agnostics. Like me, I'm an agnostic. I'm not sure what's up there, but I still pray 3 times a day in Hebrew, hoping that it might be her, but I kind of doubt there's anybody up there that's listening to it. So when you have your commander saying, if you want a bonding experience, then give everybody some chocolate milk or a beer. But trying to, even I don't care if it's an Islamic perspective or it's Buddhist or it's Hindu or whatever, presuming in a position of command to have everybody get together because we're going to go out and try to fight, and avoid IEDs and RPGs, et cetera, completely and totally unconstitutional and violative of the UCMJ. Next question, but good question, Derringer.
Hi, my name is Andrew Napier, and I just wanted to say thank you for coming. And also ask you, do you think that atheist officers should be able to share their beliefs with enlisted men that come to speak to them?
Andrew, I'm glad to meet you. We have a friend in common, don't we? And that's a very good question. You remember what I mentioned before? If you were, as Derringer, where are you? If you had an atheist officer saying, we're about to go into Sadr City, the bad part of Baghdad, or now, of course, we're mostly in Syria, everyone get together. We're going to pull for each other, have each other's back, and remember this, there ain't no God. Of course not. Of course not. And we would go running in there, with guns blaring, wanting to lay down a withering field of fire.
Leaving sucking wounds.
Sucking chest wounds, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's completely and totally wrong. But let me make it clear, in the real world, right, where pigs don't fly and stuff like that, it's rare. We don't get offenders. When Major Nadal Malik Hassan committed the massacre at Fort Hood, we had people saying, well, where was MRFF then? Because he was clearly proselytizing his perspective while he was a psychiatrist at Bethesda nearby here and elsewhere. But nobody came to us. We don't have a trillion pairs of eyes everywhere. So the person that is perpetrating 99.9% of the time, again, is someone that we would describe as a dominionist Christian, someone that cannot see the difference between the Great Commission and the Great Constitution. You can't scream Jesus in a crowded theater. I know most of you are homeschooled. Most of you eat at the same cafeteria over and over again, which is why I'm so impressed that you invited me to be here today. Graham, right? May we call each other by our first name? Go ahead and call me Mikey. Don't get familiar. All right. But the bottom line here is that you cannot mix these things. And when Andrew asked that question, we would go in there, but it's almost always this concept, if you're not familiar, dominion Christianity, that we can follow the Great Commission of Mark 16:15, Matthew 28:19, anywhere we want to. And if anyone tries to stop us, we will brand them as being anti-Christian. Calling me and my family and our foundation anti-Christian is like saying that Mikey Weinstein, his family, and the foundation hate everybody who drives a motor vehicle. I'm sure many of you have cars. And it's true. It's actually true. We do hate everybody who drives a motor vehicle if they're driving DUI. We don't care about your faith in Christianity, or whether you're an agnostic, an atheist, a Buddhist, or Jewish. We care about the time, place, and manner in which you deploy the proselytizing, etc., of your religious faith. That's all we care about. We're not a complex meal like Chateaubriand, Andrew, and Derringer, and Graham. And I forget your name, Marvin?
I think so.
We are just a hamburger. We're simple. That's all that it is. Next question. My friend Ron? Oh, sorry.
My name is Thaddeus, and I again wanted to thank you for coming out here. I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit about your past and kind of what turned you onto this advocacy, or what, in your experience and in your lifetime, kind of turned your head towards this issue that needed to be, in your eyes, brought up.
God, I love the names. I mean, Andrew, you're so ordinary. But Derringer, no, I'm just kidding. I love you. And we're going to do a selfie for our friend. But Thaddeus and Derringer, I've got people in my family that, that are going to have kids soon, and I'm going to suggest, no matter whether it's a girl or a boy, I like Thaddeus, and in fact, I like Thaddeus Derringer as a fantastic. I've written 2 books about this. The first one is called With God on Our Side, One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military. It came out in 2006 from St. Martin's Press in New York. And I made a mistake. I did not realize that evangelicals were our friends back then. I didn't realize there was a difference between an evangelical and an extremist fundamentalist or dominionist. And there is. And after the speech, I can go into more time because I know we have just a few seconds left. Second book is called No Snowflake in an Avalanche, from the Voltaire quote, "No snowflake in an avalanche ever feels responsible." Ultimately, what happened is I can thank Mel Gibson for this, because when he came out with his movie, you probably were very young at the time, in February 4th, 2004, his movie came out. I forget the name. I think it was the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre or Freddy versus Jesus, right? Obviously, it's the Passion of the Christ. I was stunned when I was my children at the academy, my future Christian daughter-in-law, my 2 Jewish sons at the time, were reporting to me the incredible pressure in the cadet wing at the academy to have everybody go see this movie. I was one of the first to go see it. It shot halfway through. I accepted Christ if they would just stop beating him on screen, right? It was, but I couldn't believe what was happening. Then I found out from my youngest son that at a few months later, I was at the academy for a graduate seminar. They only invited the graduates that they thought were very distinguished, that they really liked. You can imagine I'm not getting any invitations these days. And he told me in a very shocked way that to tell his mother that he was going to be getting into trouble. My wife had not accompanied me for that. And, this takes me back to that unhappy time, because these were the shots that were heard around the world, Thaddeus. I said, what are you talking about? I thought he'd gotten somebody pregnant, or maybe had broken the honor code or something. And he said, Dad, the next person that calls me a fucking Jew or accuses me or my family of complicity totally in the execution of Jesus Christ, I'm going to beat the shit out of them. And the rest is history. The rest was history.
Let me just ask, did you beat up folks who said something like this, quote, "In Plan A, evangelical Christians with a smile on their face will ask you to please, please, please accept their biblical worldview of Jesus. The problem with that is inevitably Plan A morphs into Plan B. They stop asking so nicely, and then you have the Holocaust, the pogroms, the Inquisition. this country is going through right now a transition from A to B.
Yes.
You still believe that, or is that?
No, well, I believe it with one change, because I wouldn't say evangelical. I would say dominionist, unbridled. Well, let me finish. I see you trying to breathe. Dominionist tsunami. And I also would like to quote the 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14. Anyone? Where Paul says, don't become unequally yoked to the non-believer, because the non-believer represents something like darkness and unrighteousness, where we represent the light and righteousness. What I think, as we interpret is happening with that scripture, is that, what is being said is that at some point we will stop trying to convert you. I mean, we cannot get connected with you. And guys, the other thing is, imagine having your commander force down your throat Luke 19:27. It's easy to remember it. You have to remember Luke, but if you're a baseball fan like me, one of the greatest years for the New York Yankees, I know you don't like them, but was 1927. What is that? That's the parable of the pounds. I mean, Jesus often spoke in parables. But as interpreted by fundamentalist Christians, and you should Google it, this is what they say, that Jesus says, go out among the people and bring back before me, Jesus, all of those that will not accept me as king over them, and then slaughter them in front of me.
Wait, who says that?
Oh, you Google. In fact, I'm sure you have smartphones now. I don't mind if you look down Luke 19:27. No, wait a minute. That's not the common perception of it.
Yeah,
but that's what's being pushed.
But okay. This sounds like there was the fellow who died in the past year, Fred Phelps, and his little band, and so forth, going around and doing that, and people saying, "Oh, Fred Phelps, that represents evangelical Christianity." It sounds like you're saying something like that.
No, what I'm saying is, listen carefully, because I'll say it again more slowly.
Okay.
I'll
try to read your
Very
list.
good. That is the concept of dominion or fundamentalist Christianity held by many. Luke 19:27 is a standard. We've had countless times we've had subordinates in the military being told by senior NCOs, senior officers, that, look, here's the bottom line here. Either you're with us or you're against us, particularly when we're fighting an enemy of fundamentalist Muslims. Now, had you heard of Luke 19:27 before I just mentioned it?
I have run across that occasionally, but how many evangelicals, even dominionists, have been in the news recently for cutting off the heads of people they don't like?
Well, let me ask you a question. When we're involved in hostilities, when we are in a war that many people feel we had no justification for, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, the way it was conducted, how many heads got blown off of innocent people there? Can we ever count the number of heads that are there? And I'm not going to be in a position of supporting ISIS for what they did. Obviously, that was horrible and terrible. There's no question. But if you're trying to talk about an aspect of magnitude, ISIS doesn't have AAA. They don't have, yet, thank God, weapons of mass destruction. What we're talking about here today is a fundamentalist religiosity, not, again, Salafist or Wahhabist Islam, but dominionist or fundamentalist Christianity mixed in with actual weapons of mass destruction, mixed in with a total poisonous or traitorous version of so-called treacherous version of patriotism, mixed in with a dearth of any restraint, oversight, or supervision, further mixed in with an unbridled access to these weapon systems because of the command structure of the military, which results in a national security threat. But next question, because we're in there 1,200 seconds. Ron, my friend.
Mikey, one clarification. The chaplain for Norm Schwarzkopf during Desert Shield, Desert Storm was Dave Peterson, PCA guy, friend. When Schwarzkopf issued that order about chaplains removing their crosses, Peterson went to him, challenged that order, and that order was rescinded. Chaplains kept their crosses during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Just wanted that clarification.
Now, bear with me. This is the first that we've ever heard of that. And I'm not denying that it didn't happen. I'm saying that obviously, my research director, I'm sure, is watching. So, Chris, jump on that one. We have never heard that. I've spoken to college and universities for a decade. But even if it did happen, my friend Ron, the fact is that the general made it clear what his sentiments were. So I don't know. Obviously, eventually it got rescinded because, we're in the war zone now and all of this stuff is going on. But I do know, of course, obviously, General Order number 1 was no proselytizing of any religion, faith, or practice. Do we still have some more time for the kids?
We do.
Ask something, like about sex or religion or politics.
My name is Abby, and I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that the way that your sons were treated was wrong, and I am sorry that happened. And I know sorry doesn't cut it, but we all killed Jesus. And when he looked at his executioners, he said, Father, forgive them. So, thank you.
Abby, thank you very much. That's actually the name of one of our German Shepherds, and so that's a very important name for us. And I could hear the emotion in your voice, and I appreciate that. Obviously, I don't, the religious aspects of it, I don't buy into, but thank you for that. And obviously, when you're a parent and you have children, I don't care if they're adopted, foster, you're a big brother, big sister, they're biological, but you, if you miss that dynamic, if you don't have any relationship with a small child that you're trying to help organize the universe with, when they feel pain, your life is now forfeit, and you're going to stop. And the concept of being accused of killing Jesus over and over and over again, and even Kevin Sorbo, the guy, the God's Not Dead guy, the guy that played Hercules on TV, just a couple of weeks ago was on a radio program where he said he doesn't understand why so many Jews don't like his movies or whatever it was. He said, after all, and this you can Google that. He goes, you did kill Jesus. And even the radio host had to say, well, yeah, they turned Jesus in. He goes, yeah, they're complicit. Really, can we get off of that stuff already? But thank you. I'm very, very grateful for that. We're going to do a selfie.
Hi, yes. My name's Dentel David A. I was a lowly grunt in the 1980s. And I do appreciate what you have to say about not wanting commanders to, pressure their subordinates. But my question, goodness, I mean, has the military changed that much since I was, a lower enlisted? I mean, there's plenty of hypocrisy and problems to go around.
Can I ask you when did you get out of the military?
Active duty, 89.
Can I ask you to do a favor for me? Because someone who can answer that question is sitting in the audience. Larry, would you mind addressing that or not? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Larry Wilkerson, one of my advisory board members. Just so you know, he also was Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell and his right-hand guy when he was the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman. He came on our advisory board after we lost Glenn Doherty, one of the 2 Navy SEALs killed in the attack in Benghazi, an Irish Catholic kid from Boston. And I think that if he can just address that briefly.
Well, second part, though.
Okay.
I mean, again, you're trying to stand up for a constitutional principle.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Well, you did ask if the military changed.
Yes, I do. Right. The impression I get from you, though, is that you feel like one of the biggest problems in the military is people, acting out their religious faith. And, like I was saying... when I was on active duty, you talk about the tarantula on the cake. I mean, God forbid if I asked for time off to go to a Bible study. But, most of the guys in my platoon don't forget to pick up your free condoms on the way down to consort with the prostitutes. And if you end up catching the clap, there's the no questions asked, VD call.
No, I get that. That's why I was going to ask if you would yield the microphone to someone who can answer that question extremely well, because he got out in '97, and when we approached him about replacing Glenn, you can't replace Glenn. I think his trajectory and what he's done in his life can answer that. But that's a good, and it's Dentel? That's right. Dentel Thaddeus Derringer. Awesome. Abby, Andrew, Ron. Okay.
Everybody can hear me without the microphone, can't you? No. Okay, I'll use the microphone. When Mikey asked me to be a member of the advisory board, I was about 12 years out of the military. I left even later than you did, 1997. And when Mikey asked me, the first thing I said was, no, I know how important and how comfortable religion of any sort administered on the battlefield makes some soldiers. And I don't want to have anything to do with disturbing that comfort and that support. I've been there, Vietnam and elsewhere. So Mikey said, well, think about it and do a little study. And I also had the problem with the same thing you did. I've been in the military for 31 years. I had not seen this except on rare occasion, very rare occasion. But one of the occasions was in the Pentagon with a 2-star general who essentially ordered people to go to prayer meetings on Wednesday night. That was immediately killed by Colin Powell when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But these were rare instances. So Mikey proceeded through a number of other people to show me hundreds of incidents that were occurring across the armed forces in all the services, at the service academies, and I changed my mind. The situation has changed in the armed forces. There's no question about it. And I'll tell you one reason I think why. I teach at the College of William & Mary, and I do a lot of analytical research. My students do a lot of research. The mainline religions in this country, Methodist, Lutheran, Baptist, which I am, and others are losing membership. And they're losing membership to what I will call the mega churches, to what Mikey refers to as evangelicals. I do too. Fundamentalist, which is a very different term to use, and then a narrower sect, dominionist. As a consequence of that, more and more chaplains are in the armed forces who are evangelicals or fundamentalists or dominionists. As a matter of fact, I looked at two very important institutions that had 15 and 20 chaplains, respectively, and of those 15 and 20, 14 and 18 were evangelicals. This has changed the complexion of how religion is dealt with in your armed forces. And it has changed it in a way that is dangerous, not just to good order and discipline in the armed forces, but ultimately to the country. It's dangerous in the ways that Mikey has pointed out. For example, when you're fighting what is basically a religiously oriented group of people in the Middle East, and it's dangerous to the very fabric of the Constitution. And I'll end with just one comment. One of my favorite Virginians is James Madison. James Madison wrote probably the best dissertation on what I'm talking about, what Mikey's been talking about, with respect to government and religion ever written. He wrote it for the state of Virginia. And it became essentially the separation clause in our Constitution. Madison argued with Washington over whether there should even be chaplains, because chaplains in the armed forces wear the armed forces uniform, which is the nation's uniform, and therefore they automatically mix state and religion. Mikey can tell you there have even been legal cases trying to end the chaplain corps in the armed forces. Now, I'm not advocating that, but I am saying, chaplains, beware. You stand as a contradiction of a fundamental precept in American governance, and that is separation of church and state. That's why we founded this country. That was a fundamental reason for the founding of this country. Religious freedom for everyone. And I think that's incredibly important, especially in the most dangerous instrument on the face of the earth, your armed forces.
Well, thank you. I should just point out, in the interest of accuracy here, that there are two clauses that are really crucial in the First Amendment here concerning religious freedom. One is the no establishment clause, which is not quite the same as separation of church and state, although I'm for that, but it's no establishment. But the other one is free exercise. And the reason there are chaplains, essentially, is because of free exercise. That here are soldiers who are sent to places, soldiers and sailors and others sent to places away from their churches, away from that. And part of being able to have free exercise is to have the availability of a chaplain, and otherwise there's not going to be anyone there. But let me just say, we're going over a little over, but since we had this discussion, if I may take the liberty of adding 5 minutes for other questions from folks.
My name is Annabelle, and I know I speak for all the students when I say we can't thank you enough for being here. It's been awesome. But along that line, I was just wondering, where is this taking us, do you think? I mean, obviously there's been tension, and what's the future relationship between the military and the Christian faith in the next 10, 20, 30 years?
Oh, I thought you meant we're taking it between Marvin and myself and the tension. I'm going to have a beer with him after this if he drinks. I don't know. That's a great question, and thank you for what you said. Annabelle, right?
Annabelle Thaddeus Derringer.
Guy got it. Yeah. I got it. You know, I get asked this question a lot. Like, you know, where do you see this going? The reason that I've disrupted my life, my family's life, and all of these things, and this was not the path that I was looking. I was looking for a nice place to live with my wife on Maui and come back to New Mexico, go to ball games and stuff, is because the same reason I think Larry's with us and everybody who's with us, which includes we have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have Libertarians, we have mostly Christians on our staff, is that we do not want to see, Annabelle, our democracy replaced with a theocracy. This has happened over and over again. I mean, the first time we saw the inextricably intertwined religious faith with the mightiest power on earth was with Rome. And then it was, I believe, 1517 with Martin Luther and the 94, 95 theses with regard to Protestantism saying enough, and we are still, whenever we see this, and we see it in the Middle East right now, with as Larry mentioned, with these horrible people and entities that we're fighting. I don't want that to happen here. In America, we don't judge your value as a young woman, a man, or as a soldier, sailor, marine, or airman, cadet, or midshipman, based upon through the prism of your religious faith. Telling someone that they lack integrity, character, honor, honorability, trustworthiness, and courage because of their particularly chosen faith or lack thereof, there is no difference between that and telling someone that they're stupid because of the color of their skin or because they were born a female. Now, some say, well, Mikey, you won't let me have my dominionist faith. If your faith says that I want to practice it, irrespective of the United States Constitution, the time, place, and manner restrictions of our federal and state construing case law, and DIR at the Pentagon, or as we call it, the Pentecostal gone. That's directions, instructions, and regulations. Well, then that's where we're going to get involved. I guess I feel embarrassed saying that half of my own family are Christians. I have to put out my Christian bona fides that most of our staff, most of our clients, most of our donors are Christians, right? And that this is not about that. It's about the way that you express it. And I know that you're all here. Obviously you have a very deep and abiding belief. I'm sure that everyone, all parts of the campus, by the way, is there a John Bass who's here today? John? Josh, is he here? Can you stand up? No, I want you to stand up. Okay, security, that's the guy. No. I was very impressed by what this young man wrote on your website today. I took a look at it, and John recently came back from, I believe it was a 13-week internship over the summer, I guess, or whatever it was, recently, in China. Among other things, he was teaching English to kids there. And John wrote something that kind of rocked my world as I was in my underwear in my room today. Don't try to envision that. He said, learning English, he noticed in his 13-week internship a certain universality, as he said, that all human beings have, and that the heart doesn't speak a foreign language, although our voices are that way. Aren't we all human beings? Aren't we all Americans? We're not going to agree on a lot of stuff, in this room. But I thought what John wrote, what came to him, and that statement was not a religiously inspired. It wasn't. Were not religious words that were in there, but that there is great universality to being Homo sapiens, and that our hearts. My heart was broken 8 days ago when one of our German shepherds passed away. While I was back here, I was supposed to testify before Congress, before the Republicans chickened out and ran away on that hearing, and I didn't have time to say goodbye to Crystal. And our dogs are working dogs. They provide protection because we have a lot of security issues. And one of the first people that wrote an email in, very touching, was my friend Ron Cruz and his wife, Jonda, who are devout Christians. Ron was going to testify on behalf of the Republicans at this hearing, had recently come out to my house for dinner, and he and his wife, Jonda, will never know how much it meant to get that email in there. From some of you who've had to put down animals or have had them, pass away. To me, they're not just pets. They're members of the family. That was an aspect of universality, and I think that's what Josh was talking about when he said we share these things. The reason I'm here today is because, look, frankly, civilization is a constant race. Patrick Henry College personnel between education and catastrophe. And what we're trying to do today is to have a bonding in the same kind of universality that Josh talked about on your website. We're speaking the same language from the heart, if not from the voice, but we are educating each other and thereby trying to avoid catastrophe, which is the very essence of civilization. Okay.
Let me just take my opportunity then to thank Mikey Weinstein very much. We're very grateful that you accepted our invitation to come.
Thank you.
We need to hear from people like you. Thank you for being willing to come talk with us. It's very helpful. Let me also remind everyone in the audience that the Newsmaker interview series continues later in the semester. The week of November 10th, I believe, is when we start up again our next round. And already Marvin Olasky has an incredible array of people scheduled to be interviewed, among them Lon Solomon, well-known pastor of a megachurch, actually. And
of course.
Also, David Benkoff, a self-identified gay activist, and a number of other very interesting people. We invite you to come back the week of November 10th. But for now, please express your thanks to Mikey Weinstein and Marvin Olasky.
Thank you, guys.